Hi, I'm Randy Alvarez. You are watching this week's WH Longevity Health News Report. With us, we have Johnny Bowden, best-selling author, 150 Most Effective Ways to Boost Your Energy. Also, the Diet Boot Camp and, five other books?
Six.
And what was your
Seventh
first book,
on the
by
way.
the way?
My very first book, which nobody ever read except my girlfriend and my mother, was Johnny Bowden's Shape Up, the 8-week program to transform your body, your health, and your life. And that actually evolved into the Diet Boot Camp program that's our bestseller on the website.
Is this your hottest seller?
It is on the website.
I listened to that.
Thank you.
This motivated me. This
Thank
is
you.
good. You know, they compare you, they say the Tony Robbins of nutrition, health and nutrition.
I'll take it.
Do you hear that, by the way?
I've heard it, and I'll take it, and I'm a big fan of his, and be very honored to be considered that.
Now, we put these tape programs together and audiobooks together to help motivate people. We believe everybody needs a coach. How important is that?
I think everybody needs a coach. Leontine Price, the opera singer, had a coach. Michael Jordan had a coach. Kobe Bryant's got a coach. People think somehow that a coach is something you need when you're not doing well. I think a coach is something you need all the time. Even the people who are the highest performers in any field have mentors or coaches or people that they bounce things off, and I think that's very important.
And now you teach other medical doctors. You teach medical doctors.
I teach
attend
coaches.
your lectures.
I do, and I also have a program for certified weight loss coaches. So yes, I work with people who deal with the public all the time like that.
Now I'm jealous. I have one big jealousy in me, and that's I'm jealous of skinny doctors, or I don't know if jealous is the right word. Resentful of skinny, successful doctors giving weight loss advice. And I said that to you in our little green room over there. I said, but you've never had a weight problem in your life.
But I actually have.
You really understand us.
I actually have had a weight problem, and left to my own devices, I would be sitting on the TV, watching TV, eating bonbons all day. I mean, I definitely...
You were fat. When?
I was a fat kid growing up.
Okay.
I was fat into my 30s, fat and flabby, and very unhealthy. And to this day, I fight cravings, and I know what it's like to fight addictive feelings for food. I think we all do. It's a rare person that I've met very few people who don't have some addictive feelings to some foods, whether it be the salty ones or the sugary ones or the fatty ones, but there are some things that almost everybody can point to and say, I can't control that.
Okay. Now, this segment, this tape, is designed for the people that Dr. Weiss gets in WH Longevity Center that say, I can't get myself into a gym, I'm not a workout person. They can't get themselves to even do what they know. They're very sophisticated, some of them. They read a lot of the books. They're yo-yoing, they try something, they don't. So how does somebody get back into it on a program? Give us some advice. Where do you start?
There's a lot to say about that. The first thing I want to say is that it's very rarely about information alone. If it were about information, nobody would smoke. There's no one who's smoking today because they didn't get the memo that cigarettes cause lung cancer.
All right.
So we know a lot of information. We know that we should eat a certain way, and we know that we should be active, but compliance, or actually following through with that, is behavioral change, and that's a little bit different than simply knowing something intellectually. So there's a lot of steps to the coaching process. It's what I do in Diet Boot Camp. It's what I teach my weight loss coaches to do. It's what you've been talking about right here, that it's more than just knowing what you should do. So we have to talk about what it is that motivates people to actually put something into action.
Okay.
My thinking about this is that we bite off way more than we can chew at first, and we set ourselves up for failure. Our brains don't process degrees. They are very digital. They're on, off, yes, no. We did something, it's a success. We didn't do something, it's a failure. So when I was a personal trainer back in the day, back in the early 90s, I used to take people who were like you're describing, who were couch potatoes and couldn't imagine doing anything, and I would have them walk on a treadmill for 2 minutes, and that was it.
Really?
For 2 minutes. Why, you ask? Because what was important was not how much they did, but the beginning of building a habit. The beginning of consistency, the beginning of setting a goal, 2 minutes, and then telling your brain, I achieved that. Now it's a success. Now it's programmed as a yes.
That's how they train animals, too.
It's exactly how. And then you can shape what they call in behavior therapy, shaping the behavior. Now you can add more minutes to that. But what's important is that the person have the feeling of success. One of the reasons why gyms can oversell memberships every January, and they sell thousands of them, and if everybody kept those memberships, they'd be out of business, is because you see these guys, and we saw them all the time when I used to be a personal trainer. Guys would come in with the Arnold Schwarzenegger Modern Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding. They'd have these 6-hour routines. They'd come in January 1st, all gung-ho to do these 2-hour routines. They'd last about 3 days.
And that was it.
And what would happen is they'd come in with a goal of doing 2 hours. They'd do only an hour. The brain logs it as a failure. Nobody likes to do stuff that they fail at. They stop doing it. So
people set too high
in the beginning when you want to start when you're teaching a kid to play catch. You've got 2 sons. You taught them to play catch. At some point, did you hit them a hard ball on a fast pitch, or did you give them softball so that they could have the experience of catching? Then it gets harder. You start with the stuff that they can feel successful about, and you build from there. So if it takes a 2-minute goal, look, if I give somebody a 30-minute goal of exercise and they do 28 minutes, their brain logs that as a failure. But if I give them a 5-minute goal and they do 5 minutes, you log it as a success. Good, now you got 1 success. Let's make it 2, let's make it 3, let's make it 30. There's no finish line.
Do you believe, by the way, people should hire personal trainers, people that can't get excited? But
I think it's always a good idea to have
as a side note, I think the biggest mistake that personal trainers make, this is one of my, I don't get mad in traffic. I don't let things bother me for the most part. I try not to let externals bother me. But when I see personal trainers killing people on the first day, second day, doing just some wild core balancing routines, I'm thinking, if I had to do that, my son, my 17-year-old son, had him a trainer doing these bizarre twisting moves on the ball. And now, it's hard to get motivated when you have an irritating, not fun workout.
Yes, it is.
So what are your thoughts on that?
Well,
and how to choose a trainer?
I think it's like how to choose a psychotherapist or how to choose somebody on Match.com to date. It's very personal. It's very much chemistry. It's a combination of like their intelligence, their connection to you, what you intuitively or on a gut level feel is valuable, whether you can spend an hour in the room with them without wanting to run the other way. So there's a lot of things that go into the chemistry of the right relationship.
Okay, now that was a sidetrack. I apologize. Okay, so getting started, start with small goals.
Absolutely, start with small, manageable goals that are you want to set yourself up for success. That's what you want to do. You want to make sure you have a successful experience before you start logging in. Oh God, I wish I had done that and I failed at that. You can't do that yet. You got to set up the goals. You have to almost under promise yourself so that you can make sure that experience is a success. So it's kind of like you want to under promise yourself and over perform. You think you can do 30 minutes? Set it up for 20. Do the 20, do the 22. And you come out feeling like, I could do that. It was successful. Next time, up the ante. That's how you build a habit. And remember, when you're trying to get off the couch and start a new lifestyle that involves exercise, you got to find a wedge in there. You're not going to start with trying to get a 4-hour chunk out of the day. Get your 2-minute chunk. Get the consistency. Build the habit. It's more important that you do something than what you actually do.
Now with me, when I get in a rut, we all get in ruts. And I've battled weight my whole life. I look for coaches. Here, when I heard your program, I read every popular diet book on the planet, went to all the seminars, but I needed that coaching. So do you think with that beginning, it's good advice to say also, maybe start one of the books, listen to some of your tapes, find a good book?
I don't want to be too self-promoting, but sure, I think that those things are valuable. That's why I write them. I mean, and why I record them. I think that they're helpful
to
people.
Some leverage.
Yeah.
Kind of motivate yourself. Or what's next? Okay, so you get them start small goals. Then some accomplishments.
But then then you can up the ante. Look, I'm a tennis player. When I started, I didn't start by playing singles against 5-0 players. You start with stuff like a stroke. Can you get the ball back over the net? Then
you have tennis lessons, though.
Of course. Of course.
So weight loss lessons as well.
Well, we have a lot of bad information out there. A lot of my books have been about debunking that information. When I wrote the 150 Healthiest Foods on Earth, which is my bestseller of all time, there's a lot of stuff in there that made people crazy at first. I didn't say soy was a great food. I talked about raw milk. I talked about grass-fed beef. I talked about the difference between farm-raised salmon and wild salmon. A lot of myths that we busted in that book, and that I busted in Living the Low-Carb Life as well. So I think there's a lot of bad information out there about what constitutes a healthy diet. Low-fat is still around. There are still people. I went in your office today, this healthy place. People are still talking about egg white omelets.
Food in here. People don't like. We don't allow people to bring bad food. within this building. It's a true story.
I believe you, but unfortunately, we don't all agree on what's bad food.
Okay.
A lot of people think, gotta eat egg white omelets because, my God, the yolk's got cholesterol. So there's a lot of that's bad information, folks, by the way, in case you didn't get my sarcasm. So the point is, there's a lot of questionable information out there about what's healthy and what's not healthy.
So your eggs, why have eggs with the yolks? Why is that good for you?
It's the perfect source of protein. It's one of the most highly rated sources of protein in terms of bioavailability. The stuff in the yolk is phenomenal for you. It contains, let's just start with lutein and zeaxanthin, which are two amazing antioxidants for the eyes that are only absorbed in the presence of fat. That's why nature put them in there in the fatty part of the egg. So getting rid of the fat in the egg, actually, you're throwing away about half of the value of the egg.
Okay, because Dr. Weiss agrees. Starting off the morning, if you like eggs and you could tolerate eggs, eat eggs.
Absolutely.
And these people are so worried about their cholesterol going through the roof.
Well,
what is your response to that?
Well, very simple. I mean, this is 1950s American Dietetic Association information that is just, it's way past its expiration date. The cholesterol in your food has virtually no effect on the cholesterol in your bloodstream. If you eat less cholesterol, your liver will make more. If you eat more, your liver will make less. It keeps it in a kind of homeostasis. Cholesterol in the diet has virtually no effect on cholesterol in the blood.
One of the things you say is, which got me going, because I got a little bit of an exercise rut about 5 years ago, is keep your word to yourself. Elaborate on that.
Well, I think that part of the problem with all these lifestyle changes, whether they be exercise, detoxification, we talked earlier about the energy book, about sleep patterns, any of these changes involve a promise. And you make that promise to yourself. Most of us don't keep our word very well. Now, if you had a friend, and that friend said, I'll meet you for lunch at 3 o'clock, Randy, and they came at 4 o'clock, and they said, oh, traffic was terrible. First time, you might believe them. Second time, oh, my dog ate my homework. Okay. Third time, oh, there was a flat tire. Fourth time, I couldn't get a babysitter. After a while, what do? You don't believe them.
You don't buy it.
You don't buy it. You're not buying. They don't keep their word. Well, we do that to ourselves. We say we're going to start a diet. We say we're going to eat this way. We say we're going to go to the gym. We make a New Year's resolution. We don't keep our word. We stop believing in our own word. So for me, part of the whole process is to have people rehabilitate their word to themselves. You have to actually learn to trust your own word. You're like that guy that doesn't show up for lunch to yourself. You've got to start showing up for lunch. You've got to start promising yourself something and then keeping it.
Keeping your promises.
A big part of it is keeping your promises to yourself, being accountable. Sometimes it's helpful to do that with a coach or with a partner, an accountability partner. Just somebody you give your word to. I'm going to do that. I have a tennis guy that I play singles with every Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. Do you think there are some Wednesdays at 7 a.m. I don't feel like being on the tennis court? You bet there are, but there's a guy waiting for me.
You don't break the commitment.
I don't break the
commitment. So
commitment.
couples like to get in shape together, eat better together. So make a commitment.
Absolutely.
But a commitment that you can keep.
A commitment you can keep, and it can be a little uncomfortable. You can work a little outside of your comfort zone, but having someone to commit to, whether it be a coach, an accountability partner, someone you met on the internet that you promised to email and tell them about what you did that day. We had some people who do that on Diet Boot Camp, and they promise, I'm going to exercise from 6 in the morning till 6:30, or I'm going to eat XYZ today or not eat XYZ today, and they promise one another, and then they keep their word, and they email each other and promise that they... and very, very effective. That's what Weight Watchers gets right. They don't get the nutritional information right, but they get the accountability part of it right. They get that group meeting, I'm here, I made a promise, I'm standing up, I'm being accountable. They get that right, and that's a huge part of success.
Okay, what about, I'm a firm believer in belief systems. That certain people, and I've been there, and that's why I think that certain people deep down don't believe that they could ever be fit or thin or lean or have their abs show. I believe that at one time. I don't believe that anymore. So how do you get people to get to the point where because they failed so many times?
Well, there's a saying, if you can believe it, you can see it. Not if you can see it, you can believe it, but if you can believe it, if you can start by believing it, then you're able to see it. If you're able to see it...
But how do you do that? What's your advice to do it? To get started, to get to that belief. I mean, they're couch potatoes. They say people aren't lazy, Tony Robbins says. They just have impotent goals. They have goals that don't motivate them. But what about the people that they just think, I would work out, but it's a waste of time. I'll be fat anyway.
I ask people like that whether or not that belief serves them. I ask them the simple question, that's your belief. Is it working for you? I'll get very Dr. Phil on them. How's that working for you?
All right.
Is that belief serving you? Is it getting you any closer to where you want to be? And if the answer is no, which it usually is, we ask, is there another belief you could substitute? Could you try it on? Even if you don't believe it, could you pretend like you believe it? How would you act if you did believe it? What would be different? How about trying that one on?
And that's what I did. I mean, through reading your book and probably 100 others, I brainwashed myself.
You read 100 others? Why? All you had to do.
I know. I should have just read yours, but I got yours late in the game.
Right.
But I got to the point where I thought, okay, I think I could do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
And but a lot of people can't get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I love this talk with you, because I'm hoping it'll motivate people to get to that mental expectancy. And how important is that?
Well, I think it's impossible to overstate how important that is. Give you an example. You mentioned Kawasaki earlier.
With Donald Trump.
Right.
Why we want you to be rich.
I have a friend, T. Harv Eker, who is the author of a best-selling book called The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. He does seminars all over the country. And he talks about how we have a mental blueprint for money. We have a mental ceiling. If you take a salesperson who is used to making $50,000 a year, and one year they make 30, they tend to work harder. But if one year they make 70, they tend to slack off. They've got a mental blueprint about, they're kind of a homeostatic, a weight.
Like a self-concept.
A self-concept, a blueprint, a mental blueprint, or you might call it in weight, a set point, and they're only comfortable there. And until they break that mental blueprint of that 50,000 a year ceiling, no matter what happens, it's not going to go. If it goes
So
up, they're going to bring
in her
it back down.
50s or late 40s that says, I'll never really get below 135.
Right. That's a mental set point.
That's a block there.
That's a mental set point, and it's a block. And
so enlarge your vision of what's possible in your life?
Enlarge your vision, but I want to...
What's possible?
Of what's possible, but I want to make an addendum to that. Because
right.
a lot of people who are going to listen to this are going to say, how do I do that? And if I don't really believe in something, how do I make myself believe in it?
Okay, good
Or
question.
if I'm not motivated, how do I make myself be motivated? And I talk about this at length on Diet Bootcamp when I talk about the concept of motivation. We really can't make our feelings be different than they are. And if you don't have that vision, you don't have it. And if you're not feeling motivated, you're not. So I think the action is, how do you bypass that? How do you bypass not feeling motivated? Now, when we make a promise to get married, we don't say, I take this person to be my lawfully wedded person until I don't feel like it anymore. We don't sign a lease and go, I'll sign this lease to pay this rent until I don't feel like it anymore. We make a commitment and take a stand that we promise to do something even when we don't feel like it. That's where the action is. So if you're waiting for motivation, you might have a very long time. But if you can bypass that and go, I'm going to take a stand for something, and all I'm going to do is play a game called Keep My Word.
Keep your word.
If I can do that, I don't have to be motivated. I don't have to be a slave to my feelings of motivation. I don't have to run off with the pool boy every time I feel like not being in this marriage, because I have taken a stand for something, and that stand means I'm going to commit to it even when I don't feel like it.
So take a stand for health, because today we're talking about the couch potatoes.
Right.
They can't get themselves motivated.
Don't worry about being motivated. Take a stand for yourself, make a promise, and play the game of I keep my word.
So
I don't care whether I feel like it or not.
And I heard this the other day from a patient. They're a not workout person. Do you say, let's try 1 day a week for 10 minutes
Absolutely.
on a treadmill?
Absolutely.
And then go to 2 days.
Absolutely.
Then the 3 days, and maybe do something a little bit every day.
It goes back
and
to
move them slowly.
It goes back to what I was saying earlier about setting goals that are absolutely set up for success. They're like fishing in a goldfish bowl. You can't miss. That's how you got to set it up. When you feel that kind of resistance, you set up. Can you do 2 minutes, Mrs. Jones? Most people will say yes. Now, here's where you're going to run into problems. They're going to say that couldn't possibly matter. And it's your job as a coach to say it does matter, because what matters is not the number of calories you burn in that 2 minutes. It's that you are starting a new neural connection, a new set of behaviors. You're setting in motion a new pattern. You're building a new habit. That's what matters, not the number of calories you burn in those 2 minutes. You're right. It doesn't make much difference calorie-wise, those 2 minutes.
Okay.
It makes a huge difference in setting up new neural circuits of success.
I want to tell you a story about Dr. Weiss.
Okay.
About 8 years ago, I said, if there was like a last supper, a last thing I was going to eat, it would be McDonald's. It would be, Big Mac and fries and a vanilla shake. And he goes, how could you eat like that, I mean, why not a piece of fish and salmon and vegetables? And I thought, that would be I couldn't live such a boring lifestyle. And on my yo-yo path, I remember eating poorly or eating well and saying, God, I don't think I'm ever going to like this kind of food. Nowadays, believe it or not, I like the salmon and the vegetables. And people say, how could you live such a boring, strict life? I'll go on a date, they say, boy, you eat so well. And it's surprising to them. But this is my, if I'm going to blow it, I'll just have a, extra maybe butter on my vegetables or something. But so tell me about that. What if somebody says, but I don't like health food or healthy food? What is your response? How do you get, I just told you my story. I just did it over time and I developed a taste.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the key. There's a very interesting book that's out right now called The End of Overeating by David Kessler, where he talks about how food has been engineered to literally make us addicted to it. And they do it by
You believe that? That's not a conspiracy theory?
No, I think I think the job of food manufacturers is to make us want, every manufacturer is to make us want their product.
All right.
Whether it's a car manufacturer, clothing manufacturer, whether it's Hugo Boss suits or whether it's McDonald's, the idea is to make the consumer want more of it and want to buy it. And the way food manufacturers do that is they engineer certain ingredients and certain combinations to make their things hyper palatable, extremely palatable to the senses. High sugar, high fat, high salt in those combinations.
Now, by the way, Doritos and Cheetos, I have a 7-year-old. Okay, he loves that. That's his idea of a good time.
He talks about that in the book.
Monosodium glutamate. Is that one of those, what you're talking about?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because it enhances flavor.
And
to be competitive in the chip world, I guess you've got to have the best tasting chip.
This is precisely what we're up against and why these habits are so difficult to break, much like addictions to cigarettes or alcohol or anything else that kind of hijacks the pleasure centers in the brain. So these people who are saying, I can't eat this regular food and I can only eat this super hyper palatable, high sugar, high fat, fast food that they're used to, you have to respect that. They have been hijacked. And the only way back to sobriety, food sobriety, is to kind of pare down those hyper palatable stimuli, the super stimuli, extreme amounts of sugar and fat and salt, and kind of get back to what food really tastes like.
Taper off or cold turkey?
Well, my personal opinion is that it's easier to break an addiction if you do it cold turkey. Because when you're sugar addicted and you have a little bit here and there, a little bit, it just primes the pump for more. They are absolutely right.
That's what it does for me.
Bet you can't eat just one is the smartest slogan the food industry ever came up with. It's 100% right. It's right for me. I can't eat just one. So I know that if I'm going to, have a plate of them, I'm going to have a plate of them. It's not going to be just one.
Okay, so what is your take then on a guy like me that I love pizza? I stay away from it, but if I eat pizza, it's like the rest of the day. I have no self-discipline whatsoever.
Well, then you better eat it at night.
Okay.
That's the last
Then I'll order another one.
Yeah.
But, what's your take on that? Because a lot of the patients, again, and this interview, this audio book at the moment is for the people that can't get excited. They can't get off the Cheetos. They know intellectually they shouldn't eat the Cheetos or the Doritos or whatever. So just keep them out of the house? I mean, how do you stay away? How do you taper off? What's your best remedy?
For example, ice cream is my personal Waterloo when it comes to food. So my personal way is I bulletproof the kitchen. I don't have ice cream in the house. It won't last the night. I know that about me, so I just don't. Now, does that mean I couldn't get up at 3 in the morning and drive to the, I'm live in Los Angeles, there's 24-hour things open. I can easily get it, but I won't climb that bar. I won't get dressed, get in the car and get it. But if it's in the refrigerator, I'll take it out. Yeah. So what I do is I just know myself, I know my trigger foods, and I keep them out of the house.
Keep them out of the house. Dr. Phil in his book said, don't invite the enemy to the table or in your house.
No,
even though I don't agree with his eating plan in that book. In fact, the secret on that weight loss challenge was if you follow the diet in the book, you won't lose the weight or win the challenge. I happen to have an inside story on that. But so don't bring it. What about the table? Bread at the table. You just tell the waiter, feel a little bit rude saying don't...
I can't remember the last time. I have to remember when I'm eating with regular people to actually not send it back because it is such a second nature. It's such a reflex action now when when my partner and I go out to dinner, my girlfriend and I go out to dinner, the bread does not touch the table. So we're so used to that, no bread, thank you very much, that we don't even think about it. If it's there, you will eat it.
So don't bring it in the house.
I don't.
Don't go to the grocery store hungry?
the kind of a no-brainer. When you're hungry, everything looks good.
What are your thoughts on like visualizing a thinner you, and rather than like The Secret, the book The Secret, rather than focusing on the fat loss or how fat they are, how much weight you have to lose, more so shift your thinking into picturing yourself as a lean person or a leaner person.
Yeah, I think.
Or how do I get fit?
I think I think visualization is so key to so many of these processes. And I think that we miss the boat when we talk about it only in terms of information like diet and exercise, and we don't talk about the psychology of it, of personal change and behavioral change. And there's lots of ways to help prime the pump for that kind of change. Putting a picture of yourself when you were thinner, or in a suit that you really looked good in, or that somebody else looks good in that you want to aspire to be able to wear.
So focus on that.
Focus on those images. Flood your mind with those positive images. And I have some objections to the philosophy of The Secret. I don't think that you can just will away world hunger by just wishing for it. But I do think you can prime your own psychology to be on the lookout for opportunities. And so if you're intending healthy eating, and if you're visualizing that, you're thinking about it, then it's in the front of your mind, and when those opportunities come about, you'll be more likely to avail yourself of them.
Okay, now what are your thoughts on this? When I listen to a lot of business books, they say try to surround yourself with successful people, or maybe even people that are a little smarter than you, a little more successful than you.
100%
So
true.
do you get now with health? Do you surround yourself also with healthy people? As much as you can?
There was a study in the Journal of the American Medical Association the last 6 months that got a lot of attention, which showed that social networks, if you have a lot of obese people in your social network, even when it's removed, even when they're in towns, in distant towns, relatives, you are more likely to yourself be obese. The media reported as obesity is contagious, and they were being facetious, but the fact is that a very well-documented, peer-reviewed study showed that people who have heavy friends are more likely to be heavy. So there is something, whether it be subtle or whether...
with the business people, I mean, successful business people would never hang around a bunch of losers that are saying, oh, the economy's terrible and you can't make a living and this and that. But yet, overweight people will hang around with a lot of people that are just bad habits and
right. And let's not put everybody who's. I mean, we certainly not want to give the impression that that if you're overweight, you're not cool to hang out with. But, but I think that there's the take-home message here is that you do want to surround yourself with people who are doing what you want to do, or doing it better than you're doing. Or when you're a tennis player, you don't want to play with a level below yourself. You want to play with a level above yourself. It brings your game up. I mean, that's kind of a maxim in sports. And I think the same thing is true here. Healthy people tend to not be around people who are snorting cocaine in the bathroom. They're just
But healthy
dying.
people, by the way, because every once in a while I'm lucky enough where somebody says, what do you do? What do you eat? How do you exercise? You love to give advice on those kind of things. I mean, if you ask a healthy person, what do you do? What's your secret? I mean, could you do that? Have you ever?
I couldn't do it in 10 words or less, but I mean, if they hang out with me, they sort of see what I do, and
Okay, so embracing this healthy lifestyle for the person that can't get moving. Obviously, they've started our program. That's why they're listening to this or watching this. What's next? What's next? What haven't we talked about? These obviously in your boot camp. How long is that?
It's 8-week program.
8-week program.
But it's really 8 weeks to change your habits and your thinking. It's not 8 weeks and you're done. It's a way of gradually starting some new habits and building some new neural connections and starting to think about food differently and raise your consciousness about food and exercise, and also some personal issues that can sometimes get in the way of losing weight. So it's a kind of three-pronged program: diet, exercise, and psychology.
I'm going to listen to this again. I haven't listened to it about,
Thank you.
About 4.5 years, but you mentioned something about gremlins.
Gremlins.
On your shoulder.
They're the voices.
Tell me about the voices.
Well, we all have voices in our heads that tell us we can't do what we think we would like to be able to do, whether it be losing weight or being successful or making more than $50,000 a year in that example we talked about, or being a successful actor. The great acting teacher Uta Hagen used to say every actor has these gremlins, and they live on their shoulder, and they say, you can't act, you will be found out as a fake, you will be found out as a fraud. And Uta Hagen used to say, you will never make those voices go away. What you have to do is make friends with them, tell them, you may live there, little gremlin, gremlin, but would you be quiet for a moment while I go out on stage and do my job? And that's what we have to learn. We're going to have little voices that say, you know, I'm sure you had a little voice that said, I can't build this phenomenal studio and build this incredible clinic and have this amazingly successful show that's on in every city. I'm sure there was a little voice there somewhere that said that to you, but you learned to tell it, please be quiet for a second while I sign the lease on this gorgeous facility. So there is a way to overcome.
So with this healthy lifestyle, because my mind would play tricks on me.
Of course it would.
Geez, what's life all about if I can't have some French fries or Doritos or whatever?
See, I never think that.
Right. So that was my thought.
And I used to eat all that stuff.
Yeah. So those were my gremlins.
And now I look back.
They've gone away, by the way. I don't have that anymore.
Well, that's what people don't understand. When addictions, and these are addictions, when you get through the end of the tunnel. I mean, I was a smoker. I know what it's like that first year of not smoking. But once you're on the other side of the tunnel, you think I ever look back and go, oh my God, what's life like? I can't smoke cigarettes anymore? Are you kidding? I remember coughing up. I remember what those ashtrays smell like. I remember not being able to catch my breath. I would never be able to play 3 sets of singles if I was smoking today. So, you know, I don't have the feeling anymore like, oh my God, what would life be like if I can't have a cigarette? But I did when I was smoking, and you will have that feeling when you're eating Doritos.
Do you think it might be tough at first?
It is tough at first.
Okay.
It absolutely is. And anyone who says it's easy is lying and has an infomercial to sell you. It's not easy. It's difficult.
We tell them over the phone it's going to be easy before they come in. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Of course, you have to lie to them to get them. Whatever it takes to get people started, to bring them in. But
to me, you know, the patients do say after about 3 days of eating right, like a hormonally balanced type of eating,
that's true.
Yeah,
that's true. You
start feeling better.
We can actually see blood levels of glucose, insulin. All of this stuff can be regulated within 3 days. So once your blood sugar is a little bit more under control and you're not getting the blood sugar roller coaster and blood sugar hell, my friend Barry Sears calls blood sugar hell, then your cravings start to subside. Are they gone completely? No. Will you have some relapses? Yes. But you learn to deal with it and you build on those successes like I talked about earlier with exercise.
So now, by the way, you don't. I mean, you have very little cravings for ice cream?
No, I love ice cream. Are you kidding me?
How often do you eat it?
Twice a day. No, I'm kidding. You know, there's no special time with it, and I'm careful with the portions, and I found little tricks like not buying the whole thing of Haagen-Dazs.
Well, I don't like these 3-bite rules. There's this one...
it doesn't work for me.
Wannabe nutritionist well, I'm saying wannabe, but... I can't just have 3 bites of something.
That's not a recognition.
Crazy.
It's not a recognition of the reality of most people's lives. I believe that many of us
stay away from it.
Right. The people who are struggling with this kind of issue with weight are also struggling with a form of addiction. And you don't tell an alcoholic they can have 3 sips of a vodka tonic, and you don't tell someone who has a serious peanut allergy that you can have a few. Everything in moderation is a lie. There are things that we can't have in moderation.
Okay.
And the power comes in knowing what those things are for you. I can have peanuts in moderation because I'm not addicted to peanuts.
You're okay.
And I'm not allergic to peanuts. But something else I might not be able to have in moderation. And knowing that, you know thyself, to thy own self be true, these are the most powerful statements in the world.
So is the goal, by the way, you know, I feel like I'm almost there, but I've gotten to the point where I could go long periods of time eating, as my friends will say, how do you know, that's so boring. But I enjoy that food. And so the goal, I guess, would be to not ever have a relapse or...
Well, no, there's a couple things to say about that. First of all, being healthy isn't boring. Having energy all day long and not falling asleep at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and being able to play 3 sets of tennis and then go about your day, that's not boring, folks.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of energy. Yeah.
You know, there's another side to not eating that kind of junk and to finding pleasure. Most of us eat those foods not because we're hungry, but because the pleasure centers of our brain have been hijacked. If you can find other sources of pleasure, that's why it's a lifestyle change. You start to find other ways to gratify yourself, to medicate yourself, if you will, to comfort and soothe yourself. You don't need the Doritos. And then now you're still having pleasure in your life. Yeah, people say it would be boring if I couldn't have any pleasure in my life. But is really Doritos the only source of pleasure in your life? Could you not find something a little bit better than that? I think you can. I believe people can do that.
All right. In your boot camp book, is that a good place to start?
I think it's a great place to start.
Okay. And where do they get the boot camp?
It's on my website, johnnybowden.com.
Johnny, well, I want to thank you for coming out. I wish we had more time.
Anytime.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure, as always.
All right. You've been watching the Wellness Hour Health News Report. We'll see you next week.